At 1:30 in the morning, a 12-story apartment building on a beach em Florida fell down. No earthquake, no explosão. No truck hit it, no gas line blew, nobody demolished it. The building was standing, people were asleep inside it, and in about 12 seconds, most of it was a pile of concrete on the ground. 98 people died, and the reason engineers around the world went quiet when they saw that footage is simply a reinforced concrete building is not supposed to be able to do that. Concrete structures are designed to fail slowly, to sag, to crack, to groan, to give a warning. This one did not appear to give the people inside any warning at all. Stay with me until the end, because the truth is the opposite of what that sentence suggests. The building had been sending warnings for years, in writing, in photographs, in puddles of water, just not to the people sleeping in it. Let me start with the structure itself, because you cannot understand what happened without understanding one specific design choice. Champlain Tower South was built in the early 80s using a very common system for apartment buildings, the flat plate. In a flat plate building, there are no beams. You have columns going up, and you have flat concrete slabs spanning between them, and the slab sides directly on the column head. That is why apartment ceilings are flat and smooth. It is cheaper, it is faster, and it lets you fit more floors into the same building height. Millions of buildings around the world are built this way, and the vast majority of them are perfectly safe. Isso tem as uma famous weakness, and it is the villain of this story. Guard this term, because everything turns on each punching shear. It is what punching shear means in plain language. Imagine holding a sheet of cardboard and pushing a pencil straight up through it. The cardboard does not bend gracefully. At some point, the pencil simply punches a hole through, and the failure is instant and local. In a flat plate building, the column is the pencil and the slab is the cardboard. All the weight of that floor and everything on it has to funnel down into a small area right around the column head. If that little zone is weaker than it should be, the column does not bend the slab. It punches straight through it. And the failure is brittle. It does not sag first. It does not creak. It does not warn. It lets go. Now, the second thing you have to understand, and this one is about water. The building had a pool deck, a large flat concrete area at the level of the ground floor holding a swimming pool, planters, and a walkway sitting on top of a parking garage. That was structurally the same idea as the floors above it, a flat slab on columns. And a deck like that has a hard job. It has to keep water out of the concrete below it forever, while sitting a few dozen meters from the Atlantic Ocean. To do that, you need two things working together. First, waterproofing, a membrane under the tiles that stops water from jetting through. Second, slope and drainage, so that water actually runs off instead of standing still. Water stands still on a concrete deck is not just an aesthetic problem, it is a countdown. Because it is what salt water does to reinforce concrete. Concrete on its own does not rust, obviously, but the steel rebar inside it does. Normally, the concrete protects the steel chemically, keeping it in an alkaline environment where it does not corrode. But when water-carrying chloride and coastal air is full of chloride, works its way through cracks and hits the steel, the protection breaks down. The steel starts to corrode, and corroding steel does something dangerous, it spins. First, occupies more volume than the metal it comes from. So the rebar swells inside the concrete, and the concrete cracks from the inside out and starts to fall, to break away in flakes and chunks. Now you have exposed steel, more water gets in, more corrosion, more spalling. It is a loop that accelerates itself. Each cycle makes the next one faster. This is where the story stops being physics and starts being human. In 2018, an engineer inspected the building. As part of the process leading up to its 40-year recertification, and produced a report. That report described major structural damage to the concrete slab below the pool deck, an entrance drive, and it identified something specific and important. The waterproofing under the pool deck had failed, and it had been laid on a flat surface, without a slope required to drain water off. He stated plainly that the waterproofing was beyond its useful life and had to be completely removed and replaced, and that failing to do so would cause the concrete deterioration to expand exponentially. Hide that word again, exponentially. That is not a vague warning about a building getting old. The report also documented abundant cracking and spalling in the parking garage columns and walls, with exposed and deteriorating rebar. Residents had complained for years about water in the garage after rain, about pooling on the deck, about cracks. Photographs taken in the years before the collapse show water dripping through the garage ceiling and rusted steel exposed in columns. None of this was hidden. None of it required special access. It was documented, photographed, discussed in meetings, and priced. And that's where the second failure happened, the one that has nothing to do with concrete. The repairs were enormous, tens of millions of dollars, and in a condominium building that money comes from the owners themselves, through a special assessment. Assessments of that it hedges. They hit people bought at the edge of their budget, they hit owners who were planning to sell. So the decision process went through years of estimates, disputes, board changes, and delay. By the time the association had approved a very large assessment and work was being organized, the clock had already run out. Nobody in that process decided to let people die. Everybody in that process made an individually understandable decision to wait for more information, a better price, a fire splash. Deferred maintenance is not a single act of negligence. It's a series of reasonable sounding postponements, and structures do not carry about reasons. So how do you get from a corroded pool deck to a 12-story building on the ground in 12 seconds? Through a mechanism engineers call progressive collapse, and it is the most important concept in this entire video. Progressive collapse means a local failure that spreads, where the collapse of one element overloads its neighbors, which fail in turn, cascading through the structure faster than anyone can react. The classic image is a row of dominoes, but the physics is worse than dominoes, because falling mass adds energy. A slab that drops even a couple of meters onto the slab below arrives with enormous force, far more than that lower slab was ever designed to carry statically. So the lower slab fails immediately, and now two slabs are falling onto the third. Once the chain starts in a flat structure, there is almost nothing to stop it because there are no deep beams to bridge over the missing support and hand the load sideways to a neighboring column. It is worth walking through the physical sequence slowly, because the speed of it is what makes people assume something exploded. Think about what a column head actually does in a flat plate. The slab around that head is carrying load in two directions at once, and all of it converges into a ring of concrete, maybe the size of a dinner table. Inside that ring, the strength comes from three things: the concrete itself, the reinforcing steel running through the column into the slab, and how deeply that steel is embedded and anchored. Take away section from corrosion, reduce the effective depth because the top surface has been degraded, and that ring catch losses margin. The building does not look different. The apartments upstairs look thin. The margin lies in a zone nobody can see. A few centimeters of concrete around a column head under a layer of chili and planters. Then add the loading that a pool deck accumulates over decades. Soil in planters get stopped up and stays wet. Pavers get replaced by adding a new layer over the old one instead of removing it. Landscaping grows. Each of these is small, none of them is a decision anyone would flag, and every one of them is permanent bad lead. A dead to a slab that was designed with a specific number in mind. Engineers have a phrase for this load creep. It is the slow accumulation of weight nobody signed off on a structure whose capacity is quietly going the other way, rising demand, falling capacity, and the crossing point is invisible right up until it is not. And there is one more layer. The human one, that this case documents better than almost any other phyluri. The people making the decisions were not engineers. They were neighbors on a volunteer board, arguing in meetings about numbers with a lot of zeros. When an engineer writes that deterioration will expand exponentially, an engineer hears a countdown. A board member reading the same sentence alongside an estimate that will cost every owner a life-changing amount of money may reasonably hear a professional covering himself. The gap between what the technical document means and what a lay reader takes from it is not a footnote to this disaster. It's part of the mechanism. Every structural report you're writing from now on is competing with that gap. The investigation that followed, run by the United States Federal Standards Agency, was one of the most extensive of its kind, involving recovered structural elements, materials testing, laser scans of the debris field, structural modeling, and a review of the building's history and documents. Its central conclusion is a warning to a whole category of buildings. The structure had capacity problems at the pool deck level. The deck slab had less strength margin at the column connections than modern requirements would demand. Waterproofing failure and long-term corrosion degraded it further, and the failure most likely initiated in that pool deck area before propagating into the tower. In other words, the collapse did not begin where the people were sleeping. It began in the part of the building that looked like landscaping. That detail is the reason this case changed how inspectors think. A pool deck hid to almost everyone as amenity, tiles, planters, chairs, an easy place to sit, others not read a structure, but structurally it is a flat slab carrying heavy dead load. Planters full of soil, water, paving, sitting on columns over an occupied garage in a salt environment with the hardest waterproofing job in the building. If you were designing a test to find out whether an organization understands its own building, you could not do better than to ask what is under the pool. And the aftermath is where engineering meets law, which is where these lessons actually getting pursued. Florida moved to require earlier and stricter milestone inspections for older condominium buildings and to require associations to maintain reserve funds for structural items rather than voting to waive them year after year, which was previously common. That second changes the Kiet revolution. It converts a moral as art, where the current owners can defer costs onto whoever owns the unit next, into a legal obligation to fund the building's structural future while you live in it. Engineers had been arguing for that tide. It took 98 deaths to get it. Want to be honest about the limits of what we know, because this channel does not sell certainty. Reconstructing a collapse from rubble is inference. Investigators can establish where a failure most likely began and which weaknesses were present, but they cannot hit on the building. There were multiple contributing factors, and reasonable engineers have debated which mattered most, including questions about the original design margin, about alterations and loads added over decades, and about long-term settlement. What is not seriously debated is the combination of structural system with a brittle failure mode, decades of chloride-driven corrosion fed by standing water, documented and photographed deterioration and repairs postponed while the damage curve accelerated. So what you do with this if you are not a structural engineer? You look at buildings differently. Standing water where it should drain is not a cosmetic complaint. It is a message about the structure under each things bleeding out of concrete are still telling you it has been reached, spelling that exposes rebar. It is not a painting problem. And an engineering report that uses words like exponential is not a suggestion. In almost every large structural failure I have covered on this channel, there is a document writing before the disaster that describes the disaster. The failure is hardly a surprise to the physics. It is a surprise to the scheduling. The lesson from Surfside ain't is a hard one. In 88, people paid the difference. Every coastal tower, every parking garage under a plaza, every flat plate slab with water sitting on it right now is running the same experiment. The only variable we control is how quickly We answer what the concrete is already telling us. Ioses tênues, the part I think about most. Buildings like this, one exist in enormous numbers. Coastal apartment towers, built in the 70s and 80s, flat plate structures, parking garages topped by plazas and pools, all of them now 4 or 5 decades into service life that assumed maintenance would happen on schedule. Most of them are finished. Some of them are not, and the difference is almost never visible from the sidewalk. It is in whether somebody opened up the deck, tested the concrete, measured the chloride, and then actually paid for the answer. If you want more engineering autopsies told with the full story and no sensationalism, subscribe to Collapse Engineered and ring the bell, because the next structure on our table also left a paper trail.